The bundle of sticks is like one of the basic property concepts they teach us in law school. And the idea is, imagine a whole bundle of sticks. Each stick represents a type of property interest. So you have fee simple, right? I own the property outright. Then I have a mortgage. So I'll give you that stick, I'm giving you the mortgage. So that's one stick. I give you possession, that's another stick. I have adverse possession, it's another stick. I have a lease, that's one stick, right? So like a lease and possession are two different things. I could have a lease but not have possession. So the equitable mortgage is one of those sticks that I have. I don't have ownership of the property. I can't occupy the property, but that contract is an interest that I have, it's a stick. And so recording the contract is actually taking the contract and recording it as an equitable interest in a property that prevents them from actually selling it to somebody else. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. أنا هون مع Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. أنا اسمي محمود فيصل الخطيب ومعي على طول بيكونوا Tom ومارك.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, man, that was awesome.
Man, so many languages. We're up to 8, I believe. So someone fact check us. I think we have 8 now.
Wow, that was awesome. You did a first shot, too.
You did first shot after your borderline racist comment. My God. It made it uncomfortable in here.
Yeah, I'm not even going to say it. I'll keep going there. So.
Man, great episode. Before we dive into it, just a shout out to Dane Laverty, episode 302. He was the one who initially made this connection. Great episode. That's where we got the term ripping coldies for making cold calls. Just a great line. So, but no, great episode. Ton of good information here. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know too much about either.
Well, I feel like today's episode, we never really talked about almost everything there. We some of the behind the scenes stuff that he shared with us, like it's a lot of stuff that most people just don't know. They sign paperwork on, but at the same time, it was stuff we've never talked about here. So it's just great.
Yeah, like the title company is like just an insane part of the process for me. Like if you buy a home once every 30 years or whatever, like who cares? But it's when you're doing these transactions over and over again, it's like, man, this is pretty ridiculous.
But that's where usually most investors' knowledge stops. It's like, I know I'm getting fucking screwed, but I got to do it. So, and they leave it at that level. But we kind of dove into how you're getting screwed today. So,
yeah, a lot of good stuff here. You ready for the Chicago our housing provider tip of the week? Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. So, the housing provider tip of the week is right now, the whole world of HVAC is changing. A couple years ago, they eliminated Freon. So, Freon's gotten very expensive. And now things are changing again. And I don't know the exact ruling. We could put some of that in the show notes here. But as if you're getting any HVAC repairs done this year, maybe your AC is going out this summer, or you're planning on replace your furnace coming into the winter next year, make sure you understand what's going on, because they're changing rules around the coils and the manufacturer requirements. So what you have right now might not work, or if you just go replace one piece of your HVAC set, it might not work next year when your other piece goes out and you have to upgrade it totally. So keep that in mind. Any HVAC repairs coming up here this summer, make sure you understand all the new rules around HVAC.
All right. We got one of the more interesting guests here. Had multiple careers, multiple degrees, just has done a ton of different things. So a lot of value dropped on this. So without further ado, we have the bow tie attorney, Mahmoud Faisal Elkhatib. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We are excited. I know we had a couple of reschedules. This has been a long time coming here.
Yes.
You did not disappoint. You rocked the bow tie.
Thank you.
You are known as the bow tie attorney.
Yes, I am.
For those who don't know you, explain.
So I went to a gala once and wore a bow tie, and everybody loved it. And then I'm like, I'm going to try this out. So then I showed up to court one day in a bow tie, and I was talking to the judge, and the judge started talking to me as if I was the professor. And I was like, oh my God, this is different. Because typically I'm a big guy. So when I show up and people get intimidated, and I found that the bow tie makes me look a lot less intimidating and more like a professor. So I started wearing the bow tie. Well, because of my name, and people have trouble remembering my name or at least pronouncing it, people are like, oh, what was that guy? What's his name? The bow tie guy. Come on, the guy who always... So then I became the bow tie attorney.
So is this every day? Monday,
every
Tuesday?
Day. I wear, even on Saturdays.
How many bow ties you got?
At least 50. At least 50 bow ties. Different colors, different shapes, different the whole thing. Yeah.
All right, that's awesome. All right, so let's go in chronological order here. When did you decide I'm going to be an attorney? Like, was this a thing as a young kid? Was this in college? Like, let's take us through this here.
So this is actually my 7th career. So
let's hear it. I'm all in on this.
So I'll try to keep it short because I know we only, I can't be here all day. So I'm originally a chemist. So my undergraduate degree was in chemistry. And I just didn't want to do the typical poli-sci or business or whatever. So I know chemistry, I did chemistry. And then I used to manufacture hair care and skincare products. Started doing that, selling to retailers across the country. And then from there, I went into turnaround consulting. So I was consulting for companies that were going into bankruptcy or wanting to get out of bankruptcy or stay out of bankruptcy. And I was so frustrated with the attorneys I dealt with. It was annoying. They didn't understand. A lot of times, they can't read a financial statement, and they didn't understand the finances. And more importantly, as a client, I felt that my attorneys didn't understand the total picture, the total business aspect. How do I, yes, thank you for giving me the law, but I need to know from a business standpoint, how do I incorporate that within my business model for me to actually get to the next level?
How do you apply it? Yeah.
How do I apply it?
Yeah.
And it's always like, well, it depends, and maybe you don't know. I could never get a straight answer from the attorney. And so I was like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And I was like 32 when I jumped in and started law school. After turnaround consulting, I went into real estate. So I became a real estate broker, and then I started real estate development. And that went sideways in 2008. I'm sure you've heard of it. So I was in law school. And at the time, I had a friend of mine who was an attorney. And we started a foreclosure defense firm. And I was still in law school. Went from there. And then I graduated law school. Started was in another foreclosure defense firm with guys that I'm with now. And next thing we know, I'm doing real estate transactions.
How do you make money for representing people that are in foreclosure?
It's a great question. So what I found is, so I looked at it was a business model thing, right? So what typically happens in a legal relationship is your attorney charges you an hourly rate, right? And they do a ton of work up front. And then you get this massive $10,000 bill, right? And then they don't do any work for the next 3 to 6 months or 2 months or whatever. And then they come back and they do another chunk of work. And so what happens is the client is hit with these massive ups and downs of fees, and the attorney's cash flow is completely messed up because they work hard and then they don't. So it becomes this. So what I realized was that over the life of the case, if we just spread out that cost for the client, then it stabilizes the cash flow for the client and stabilizes the cash flow for the attorney, right? And so the way we do it is we charge monthly fees for representation of the client. And so when you do the monthly fee, the client knows what they're paying. 1 month I might do 18 hours worth of work. Next month I might not do anything. But over the course of the case, I can do it. And then the question you actually asked was, how do they pay? Most people can afford something, but they can't afford their mortgage payment, right? So what we do is people are like, well, what are you really defending? So the banks have done a wonderful job of lobbying to make sure that all of our affirmative defenses went out the door, right? So what we've been doing the last 4 to 5 years has been really using counterclaims. So we'll sue the banks for violations of RESPA. We'll sue the banks for violations of the Consumer Fraud Protection Act. And so we'll go through all those things. And so when we bring those countersuits, I mean, we'll have awards of between $50,000 to $200,000 against the bank that they have to pay out, right? And that's not guaranteed, obviously, but when they make mistakes, it becomes an issue. So then we had to redefine the concept of win, right? So typically a win is like, oh, I won this case and they gave me this big $30 million award. In foreclosure, it's different because what the client wants is sometimes they just need more time. They need enough time for their kids to graduate high school. They need enough time for them to do something else, whatever the case may be. When the client gets more time, typically a foreclosure could be about a year, right? And so instead of it being a year, we can now keep a client in their house for 3, 4, 5 years. I've got cases that were like 8 years old. And so for the client, that becomes a huge saving grace. They're living in the house for $600, $700 a month, depending on the type of case. Yes, they're accruing the interest from the bank. However, the value of the property will determine what the exit's going to be. So at the end, we can do a short sale. We can do a loan modification. We can do a deed in lieu, right? But at the very least, the client has had the time. Usually, they lost a job, right? Or they had, and it's interesting, most of the country, we're all like 2 to 3 steps away from total financial disaster, right? The transmission goes out in your car, the water heater goes out, and the HVAC goes out, and then your kid's tuition. You're done. You're in foreclosure. You're going through bankruptcy, right? It becomes a situation. So most people just need time to get back on their feet and to get right. And so with foreclosure defense, we can do that. And then sometimes you can do short sales, right? And so we'll short sale the property out, and they might get money back at closing costs, relocation fees, right? So those are kind of some of the things that we do, and that's how I became an attorney.
Man, I want to take a step back. So going back to starting a new career at 32, we have a lot of listeners who are around that age who are probably like, I'd like to get more into real estate, but I've already spent 5 years here, and I don't want to make that shift. It's a sunk cost almost, like
risk.
Yeah, it's a risk.
It's a huge risk.
I know what I do. So can you provide some insights or some guidance there for that person who has an established career?
Yeah.
And like they're just scared to make that jump to a new one and start at ground zero.
Well, it's funny because I just started my master's in social work.
There you go. Bring it.
And I'm not going to say my age, 48, but so yeah, jumping is very scary, right? So I'm going to little brief thing.
Keep going.
I've got some friends of mine who are in this support group for CEOs and executives, right? And they're attorneys. And so it was interesting. They were talking about the different people that were in their group. And there are people that are, $30 million companies, billion-dollar companies. And it was interesting. A lot of them were really just normal people. Like they're just typical people. They weren't like brilliant. Some of them were a little bit on the, not so brilliant side, right? But I was stunned. I'm some of them don't even read financial statements. Some of them don't. It was just wild, the stories that they were telling me about the people that they were working with. And I said, what was the common thread? And they said, no fear. These are men and women who had no fear. They just jumped in, right? And I think the one thing that I've had, and I don't know if it was a benefit or a plus or a minus, and it's hurt me and it's helped me, but I've really been willing to take the risk, right? And a lot of it, I think, comes from faith and confidence that I can figure it out, right? Can we swear on this thing?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, good. So I tell my team, I wanted to make sure that this is PG or R-rated or X, right? No, definitely not X. Definitely not X.
Yes, keep the shirt on.
Keep the
Not
shirt
with
on.
all guys in the room.
Well, exactly. I was gonna say no, definitely not. Even if I have the bow tie, I'm not Chip and Dale in this thing.
You've used that line before.
I have. Totally have used that line.
I totally use that all the time.
Well, the best part of the bow tie is when I take it off at the end of the night. You untie the tie and it hangs down, and suddenly I'm James Bond.
Yeah, all of a sudden.
Like all of a sudden, it's the coolest thing. What was your question?
We're talking about making jumps, being fearless.
So it really is
The common thread is where
the common thread is no fear. What I tell my team about the no fear thing is don't worry about making mistakes. Like I've got an amazing team that I work with, and especially when they started out, they're like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, just listen, there's almost nothing that we can't unfuck, right? If it's fucked up, we'll figure it out. And that really has become our mantra in terms of how good we are. We get really fucked up cases. Like I've had cases where it was a short sale negotiation while fighting in the foreclosure case that went into probate. And so we had a guardian ad litem coupled with a guardian ad litem, and it was navigating and twisting and turning between all the different parties. It really is an orchestra, and I enjoy it. Before I became the bow tie attorney, they used to call me the after the fact attorney. After every other attorney or someone has fucked up the case, they bring it to me.
Yeah.
Step in. Like I've got one now where we have people record contracts, right? And I think it's I've done it, right? I've recorded a contract. I've taken those actions because sometimes you just have to really enforce your rights. But the twisting and turning. Essentially, it was a wholesaler, and they recorded the contract.
Define what recording. We've never really talked about it. So explain what recording a
perfect.
contract means. I think
Yeah.
that'd be helpful.
So situations where you have buy-sell, right? So you got a buyer and a seller, and someone breaches. Typically, when you record the contract, it's the seller who breaches. So the seller's like, I don't want to sell you anymore. I'm out. Sometimes they have good reasons. Sometimes they have no reason, right? And in other times that they'll use that as a way to take I'm going to say steal, but they take the earnest money, right? If it's a big earnest money and they want to take it, so they'll do that, right? And so as the buy side, the buyer, the only remedy a buyer has in a lawsuit is specific performance. I can't sue you for damages. I can sue you to sell me the property. The seller can sue for damages, but I have to sue for specific performance. And so when I want to do that, and I want to force you to sell me the property, I can't buy the property if you sold it to somebody else. So recording the contract acts as a lien on the property.
So if someone else tries to buy, it'll show up on title.
They can't clear title.
Yeah.
Right? And the reason I'm allowed to do that is because technically a contract is like an equitable mortgage. So I have an equitable interest in the property by my contract right. I don't know if you're familiar with a bundle of sticks.
Nope.
All right, so in law school...
Bundle of rates, dude. Do you
Bundle
remember your
rates.
licensing law? Sorry,
No,
keep
God,
going.
no.
Okay. So the bundle of sticks is like one of the basic property concepts they teach us in law school. And the idea is, imagine a whole bundle of sticks, right? Each stick represents a type of property interest. So you have fee simple, right? I own the property outright. Then I have a mortgage. So I'll give you that stick, I'm giving you the mortgage. So that's one stick. I give you possession. That's another stick. I have adverse possession. It's another stick. I have a lease. That's one stick, right? So like a lease and possession are two different things. I can have a lease but not have possession. So the equitable mortgage is one of those sticks that I have. I don't have ownership of the property. I can't occupy the property, but that contract is an interest that I have. It's a stick. And so recording the contract is actually taking the contract and recording it as an equitable interest in a property that prevents them from actually selling it to somebody else.
Got it. All right. So the seller, though, still has like a lot of ways out, right? Because this has to be after attorney review, I assume, right? Because in there
Yes.
you can make whatever requests you want.
Attorney review, you can
Ask
it's
for
a
the moon.
Tuesday. I want to go.
Yes. So I guess I'm just trying to think of other situations. Like even if it's a wholesale off market as is, like waive contingencies, like what are the other outs to avoid this? If you were on the sell side.
On the sell side?
Yeah. Not saying anyone should do this. I'm just like
Yeah,
wondering.
yeah.
I'm wondering more from the buy side. Like, how am I protect? Like, how can I button myself up to make sure this doesn't happen to
I've
me?
had to record it before because the seller got a higher offer and wanted to cancel our deal. That's what happens.
That happens a
That's
lot.
often,
Yeah.
That happens a lot. They get a better offer, they want to cancel so they can get the better offer.
Yeah, and it's past attorney review, and technically they can't, so like screw you, and you record it. Yeah.
Correct. There are ways to get out of a contract.
Yeah, so I guess let me rephrase. Like, as the buyer, what else do I need to be aware of that the seller? What else could the seller do? Like, what is the other, like, besides just backing out unethically? What other leg do they have to stand on after attorney review? Is there any? And is there any?
I'll give you an example, right? Let's say you're a wholesaler, right? And you've taken the property, you've locked under contract, as a wholesaler does, right? They lock the seller in, they go out and they market the property to a bunch of people, right? And then they market a bunch of people, and when they do that, they are exposing that property to other potential investors, right? And so it's almost like, honor among thieves. You're not going to expect the investors you just pitched this deal to go behind your back to buy the property.
Yep.
Well, believe it or not,
Some shady one will do it.
it happened, right? And I've got a situation. I had a situation where that happened, right? And so they'll go around, and the seller wants to get out of the contract. So the buyer has a couple options. The first one is they record the contract. Now that they record the contract, it's interesting. People don't realize that most of the law is how much you know the law and how much you're willing to twist it, and it's like sticking the knife in, right? I would say a majority of real estate attorneys who do real estate transactions don't stick the knife because that's not what they do. They're more about having a conversation. They're transactional. It's the litigation attorneys who know how to stick the knife in, right? And it's interesting, if you have a litigation attorney and a transaction attorney writing a contract, the litigation attorney is not going to put in half the things the transactional attorney will put in there, right? Because we know I'm going to get to court. There's no way I'm going to let that pass with a judge, right? There's no way I can prove that, or there's no way that's going to happen, or by the time we're going to go down that road. So it's interesting when you see the two different types of dealings in a transaction. Because I am a litigator, and because I have litigated, and because I've won and lost in court, right? My losses are just as important as my wins. Because without my losses, I won't know where I fucked up or what could have been different. So because I know my wins and my losses, I know how hard I can push and how not to push. And so your question of how does a buyer's attorney protect themselves, or a buyer wholesaler, or a buyer in general protect themselves from the seller, and I'll say that even for the seller, you have to have an attorney that knows what the fuck they're doing, right? And a real estate transaction is extremely complicated, yet we've turned it into McDonald's, right? You go in, you close, within an hour you're out, everything's done. But the amount of pulleys and levers and twists and turns, I mean, I think you said you were a lender, right? Are you licensing, just real estate licensing?
Just real estate licensing.
Okay, so I mean, just real estate licensing, like how many laws do you go through to figure that out, right? And then you add the lender on that. And a transaction really is an orchestra playing. You've got the buyer, the seller, you got the seller's attorney, the buyer's attorney, you've got the inspector, you've got the real estate broker on the sales side, the real estate broker on the buy side. Then you haven't even got to the lenders yet, right? Then you've got the lender, you've got the processor, you've got the broker. Then I haven't even touched the title company, right?
Yeah.
So you've got like 15, 20 people working a transaction, and you need to pull all those very gently to make sure it works well. And so what has given me strength, and I've seen this also in other attorneys who do litigation and transactions, is that we can hold the line a lot harder because we know. So the point is, you may not have a leg to stand on from a legal standpoint, right? But with the right attorney, you can still win.
Yep. Yeah,
You know what I
you
mean?
apply the heat and
Oh, absolutely. Because again, it's the doctors like keep pressing until it hurts. So that's essentially what a lot of what we've done with the banks. Find that weak point, and you hit as hard as you can on that weak point to the bank. The bank expecting to win every single time, like a bully, right? You hit the bully once, and the bully's like, "Oh my God, holy shit, you hit me." It's the same thing in every other situation.
I've always explained litigators to be more on the offense constantly versus on the defense, or not even defense, but they're just on the offense all the time. There's never it's never like a mutual agreement type scenario. Because for us with leases, that we do a lot of commercial leases, you know right away if this guy's a pit bull or not. Like, and
Right.
you know this guy does litigation, but just on the way like he attacked me, he's like, man, half the shit you just said is full of shit. But
Right.
I'm not gonna fight this fight with you, man. Like,
Right. It's a persona. That's kind of, I mean, they say we love the practice of law except for lawyers, judges, and clients. Yes, when they're pit bulls, it's an intimidation thing.
Yeah.
I don't like taking that route. I'm more of a carry a big stick and speak softly, right? Teddy Roosevelt. And so my thing is like, I'll be cooperative and I'll be friendly and cordial, and I'm about to make this deal, but don't fuck with me. Don't fuck with me. Don't fuck with my client. Don't be stupid. Let's just keep it up and above board. And if you do get stupid, I don't give a fuck, right? And I'll go all the way to the end. So it's a balance, right? I don't have to start out that way.
It's like picking a fight with a martial arts guy.
Right? Yeah.
this is just Roadhouse.
Yes. Right. Yes. It's Roadhouse. It is Roadhouse. Absolutely. The new one and the old one. Yeah. I just dated myself.
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of our listeners are like, wait, what?
I was so excited when I found out there was a new one. I think you told me about it.
Yeah.
I went home.
It's actually pretty good. It's actually pretty good. I was impressed.
All right, so you mentioned a little bit about how you represent your clients. You have an interesting fee structure.
Yes,
right?
I do.
So do you mind divulging some of that and just how you came up with it? And
Absolutely.
Because I don't think a lot of our listeners understand the whole, that the attorney is the title agent. Like, I don't think we have a full understanding. We can take it a step back even.
And I feel like I'm going to be like the guy that's like the whistleblower on the legal industry that's going to blow the top on the title fees. So I'll start with typically in a transaction, I named all the different people that are in the transaction, right? And so at closing, every closing, especially residential, and really mostly only residential, there's something called the closing business disclosure form, right? And it's a form that says, lists out the fees that you paid, and it's the attorney and the title company disclosing that the attorney is getting money from this transaction beyond their attorney fee, right? And so in that document, it also states that the buyer has a right to choose any professional they want to use, and they have waived that right, okay? So I saw that form, and I'm like, what's this?
So real quick, before we go on though, there's really no fees aside, like the buyer, it would, in no instance besides the fees, would it make sense for the buyer to actually pull in someone else to be the title agent, right? Like that.
Well, that's a great question. So let's talk about the title agent because I didn't talk about that.
All right.
So the title agent, so the seller's attorney has a relationship with a title company, and they act as the title insurance agent, right? So they're going through and they're clearing title, removing the liens, making sure it's clean, making sure the transfer from the seller to the buyer's getting everything they're supposed to get in the transaction, okay? For that, the seller's attorney charges their client between $600 to $1,000. That's the attorney fee.
Yep.
In addition to that, both the buyer and the seller pay insurance to ensure that the attorney didn't screw up, the title company didn't screw up. And so on the sale side, it's called an owner's policy. And on the buy side, it's a lender's policy. So the owner's policy is providing insurance to the buyer that if they missed something on title, the buyer can go in, call the title company and say, hey, this was a mistake. And the title company now has to defend to remove that interest, okay? Now, on the buy side, the buyer pays about $3,000 to $3,500 in fees just for title. That's the escrow fee. And the reason, usually, if it's a cash deal, escrow split 50-50. On a lender deal, finance deal, the borrower or the buyer takes on all of the escrow fee because they have to work with the lender. Mortgage docs, the note, the this, the that, like that thick 3-inch package that the buyer signs, that's the title companies to go through that.
And to be clear for our listeners, because a lot of them like, oh, it's a cash deal, it's hard money. Hard money is still lender. It's
hard
still
money. Yeah,
it's almost harder. It's almost more difficult for the title company.
Absolutely. Hard money, private money lender.
Anything, right? Anything, it's still 100% on you as the buyer.
Whenever the buyer is signing a document other than the settlement statement, right? I mean, but if you get a thick packet of anything,
yeah,
that's on your side.
Yep.
Right?
Which theoretically makes sense.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. Because
you're causing this.
You're causing most of the work, so most of the work should be on you.
Yes.
And so the seller's attorney, the lender's policy. Forgot to finish the lender's policy. Lender's policy is insurance to the lender that your lender is first in line, or whatever line they're supposed to be in, if it's a second mortgage, right? So you're paying for their insurance. Now that insurance, there's also things called endorsements. And it's amazing how many master gurus and these real estate guys who go on and have thousands of people and charge you tens of thousands of dollars they have no fucking idea what a settlement, what's on that settlement statement, right? They claim to do it, but they don't understand it. So specifically, that lender's policy doesn't cover everything, right? So if you screw up a PIN number, which I've seen happen, and that PIN goes sideways, the title company, like any insurance company, they're going to find any reason not to pay out. So they're like, oh, you don't have the PIN endorsement. I'm sorry. The PIN number's wrong. That's your problem. That's not mine. And they're out, right? Or, oh, wait, there's an EPA violation or something that's out there. Yep, sorry, we're out. It's all your problem, right? So in each of those endorsements there's like hundreds of endorsements, but there's usually 3 or 4 on title, but each of those endorsements are essential to protect the buyer.
Yes.
Right? And the lender. Like there's a HOA endorsement, like a condo endorsement, because if you didn't get the paid assessment letter, the final paid assessment letter, and it turns out there's a $10,000 in paid assessments, you don't have that endorsement, you're out, right? So, and then the owner's policy might kick in. But the point is the lender's not protected. So the seller's attorney, that lender's policy, and those endorsements was about $800 to $1,000. a majority of that goes to the seller's attorney, right? And so the seller's attorney walks away from the owner's policy minus some fees that they pay to the title company and the lenders and the endorsements on top of their fee. The buy side of that is like $3,000 to $3,500. The cool thing is, and this is kind of how I've really operated much of my career, I found the area that nobody else is in, and I tried to exploit that, or at least get into that so that way I can profit from it, because I hate competition. I like to win, right? So the best way to win is make sure no one's competing against me or no one's in that space. And so, and quite honestly, it came from a place of, I need business, right? And I can't live on buyer's fees of $600 at closing. It doesn't work.
Sorry to cut you off, but like to go on a quick tangent, it is crazy in Illinois how much the attorneys do compared to the agents. And like the agent gets 2.5% of $1 million.
Oh yeah,
It's
we
like
do
it's
a
25,
lot of the
and
work.
there's a lot of work beforehand. And but like once the contract's signed, it is like very
All the attorneys.
disproportional.
Yes, I mean, like the attorney will do. They'll do all this work for 30 days or 45 days or whatever it is, and they'll make $3,000 or $4,000, right? Which I'm not knocking that, but it's a lot of work. If I charge the hourly rate, I'd be getting paid $10 an hour, right? It's stupid. But I'm grateful for it because that's how I make a living and feed my 9 unborn children. So back to my fee structure. So I found out in Illinois, the buyer has a right to pick who they want to be their professionals. So they get to pick their own inspector, they get to pick their own title company, their own attorney. They get to pick all those things. And if you remember when I started this, we talked about the closing business disclosure, business closing blah, 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 whatever it is, right? The closing business disclosure form, which waives their right to pick somebody. So essentially, what I realized was that I could bifurcate the transaction and take over the entire buy side and make those fees and triple the amount of money that I was going to make versus making only the $600 as a buyer. And so what that means is that $3,500 that goes, or let's say $3 to make it easy, that $3,000 that the buyer's paying that typically goes to the sell side, so that goes to the seller's attorney and the seller's title company, now comes to our chosen title company, right? And I'm not greedy. Everybody makes money. So that $3,000, $1,000 goes to the title company, $2,000 comes to me. And at closing, once we've signed all the documents, I will physically, personally write a check for $1,000 and give it back to my client as a refund.
Yep. So that all makes sense how it's all win-win. Who's pissed off here is the seller attorney, right? Because he or she thought he was going to get this, and he or she is not.
So the seller's attorney gets pissed. They lost $800, maybe $1,000, right? So they get $1,000 less. They still made $3,000, right? The other one that's pissed is the seller's title company. The seller's title company hates getting bifurcated.
Oh, because you have two separate.
Because you got now 2 title companies.
Yeah.
Right? So, for example, if I'm on one side with my title company and Chicago Title's on the other, Chicago Title's only getting, 20, 30% of the owner's policy, if that, right? So they're making like $300. And they're like, this is bullshit, right? They were expecting to make $2,000. So they're the ones that usually fight back.
Got it. That makes sense. I've been in a similar situation. This was back when we were, we had an issue with one title company taking draws. Because we would buy a property and then we'd do a giant rehab, right? And then
Construction draws.
Correct. And so we wanted, when we closed, we wanted to be not with this title company. I'm not going to name by name, but we wanted to. So that was the only time I bifurcated wasn't even a money thing. It was I cannot go. I don't want to pay for another policy after the fact. I do not want to go do my draws with you guys. Therefore, and they were bitching about it, but it's well, you did this to yourself. This is it's impossible to work with you.
Yes.
So that's my only experience
with
in bifurcate.
Yeah, I've been doing bifurcation for about 2 or 3 years now, and some people don't like. And I had one attorney look at me and go, "I'm like, bro, I got to make a living too." He's like, "Go get more sales," and I'm like, "Great, yeah, okay, but you know what? This is what's coming through my door, and it's really hard as an attorney to convince because the pipeline comes from the real estate brokers, right? The broker decides everything, right? Because the client doesn't know who to go to.
Yeah.
So the broker directs. So once a broker finds an attorney that they like, it's really hard to move them off of that, right? So I figured, well, these attorneys, they don't like the buys, so I'll take the buys. So give me all your buys. I'll do all your buys for you, and I'll make more money. Your client gets $1,000 back at closing. It's a win-win-win. And your attorney doesn't get pissed because he didn't want your buys anyways. So, yeah.
That makes sense. So like they almost win too, because then they can tell their buyer like, hey, you're gonna get $1,000 back at closing.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Especially now with the new real estate commission laws or the rules that came out, and they're like, okay, the buyer's attorney or the buyer's broker, they can't split the commissions, or they're not going to split the commissions. So I've seen transactions where the buyer has to come up $1,000 or $2,000 on top of everything else just to pay the real estate broker.
Yep.
Right. So this goes towards helping that. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Illinois is what we would call a two-attorney state, and a lot of states are not.
Yeah.
Like, you ever see that changing, or is there any history of why it's like that versus so many other states are only single?
Well, it's interesting. The state of Illinois, the lawyers are really, all the politicians are lawyers, right?
Yes.
And there's a lot of the politicians from the old boys club, and they're all
Abraham
tax.
Lincoln? No, I'm not that old. I'm joking.
I'm not that old, but they were tax lawyers, right? So a lot of the tax laws for the real estate taxes are the way they are because the politicians were the tax attorneys who were doing the tax appeals and everything else. It's an interesting trend. What's happening now is we're seeing a lot of real estate brokers wanting to be title agents, right? So that 2.5% or 3% they're making, whatever, they now want the title fees.
Yep.
Right? And I don't understand how other states don't have attorneys in the transaction, because I can't tell you how many times I've had clients come to me and I'm like, bro, if you just had a fucking lawyer look at these documents beforehand, we wouldn't be in this situation. Where like the other one that's huge that I've seen a lot among investors is private money lenders, right? They don't have a lawyer. The private money lender has the borrower's attorney writing the documents that they're protecting their $300,000 investment with. Yes. And there's no attorney. And you have these big gurus who are literally telling their private money lenders, oh, you don't need a lawyer. Don't worry. It's stupid. It's bullshit, right? Now, the attorney who's representing the borrower and writing documents for the lender, it's a serious conflict of interest.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Especially if you're also taking money from the lender, right? So you're charging the lender saying, oh, yeah, but I'm not your attorney, but I'm going to charge you a fee to do. You're representing two sides within the one transaction. Huge issue. And the lender, when shit goes sideways, who are they going to call?
Yeah. The attorney they didn't hire.
Right. The attorney they didn't hire. And what are they going to call the borrower's attorney? It's like, oh, I can't help you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the first thing they're going to say. Listen, I can't.
I have nothing to do with this. I'm sorry. You're on your own.
That's a script right there.
Right. And all of a sudden, they're stuck with somebody else's documents, and they don't have any of the protections they need to take the property back or whatever they need to do.
And then the lender takes to another attorney and saying, why would you do the paperwork like this?
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. Well, I didn't have an attorney. Really? So
you've alluded to a few hairy situations. Do you mind? People love hearing these crazy stories. Do you have like one or two that you can share?
It's a great question. There's so many. I think I had one situation. So wow, there's so many. There's so many. I would say I had one situation where I wanted to bifurcate title, and we had an attorney on their side who just didn't understand what the bifurcation was. And I'm doing everything in my power to get a hold of them to explain it, and they just don't want to talk to me. Like, they're just refusing to talk to me. And I think what they thought we were trying to do was trying to take their title fees away from them. And I was trying to explain, no, it's split. So you still make yours, I make mine, and it just became a disaster. And at the end, they ended up canceling the contract on my buyer. And one of the conditions, from my understanding, was that they would reinstate the contract if I was no longer the attorney. And I was like, well, that's shady. So we went and
Can you legally do that? Is that a...
It's totally illegal.
Yeah.
You cannot do that. You cannot make a condition of doing business with the other side and say you can't. I mean, they can do it. People do things all the time they're not supposed to do, but it's very unethical. They have a right to choose who they want to have as an attorney. So we recorded the contract and said we want to buy this property. And they ignored the contract being recorded for 30 days until they had to sell the property. And they couldn't sell it, and they couldn't clear title. And so we went back and forth. Ultimately, I had to file a lawsuit for specific performance. And in the end, my client got paid more than what she put down.
So she had to get the property or no?
No, she didn't get the property.
Got it, but she ended up made whole.
Whatever she had put in, she got her earnest money back, plus she got back more money on top of that to cover the costs and expenses of what happened, right? I wasn't looking to make a killing. I just wanted to be what's fair. There's times where I've had like huge wins. I had one where my client had come to me. She was 3 other attorneys trying to sell her property. And every time they got close to closing, she would freak out. And unfortunately, she had some mental health issues, but she would panic and then accuse everybody of colluding and trying to steal her property from her, right? And she had a partner who owned 50% of the property. And we couldn't figure out which one was crazier, whether she was or her partner was. Either way, we had to navigate the property. We spent hours just talking to her that everything's going to be okay. At one point, I got a call saying that she was institutionalized. And the broker wanted to go to the hospital and have her sign a POA in the psych ward. I'm like, you can't fucking do that. I'm like, she's clearly incapacitated. There's no way. So yeah, I've had some crazy stuff. I've heard of people going to the hospital. The borrower was having a heart attack in the hospital to go sign the mortgage documents. I'm like, you really want that deal? I'm not doing that.
Yeah, man, people are desperate out there. That's tough sledding. Do you deal at all with like demo court or stop work orders? Like that's probably there's a lot of our listeners who try to buy value add properties, right? And
Absolutely.
They got to play in the mud to get a lot of these.
Absolutely. I've always said that the higher the deal, the more money you make.
Yes, exactly.
It's harder, but that's really why you make more money on it, because you're willing to untangle it. Again, the concept of no fear, right? And I don't say, when I say no fear, I want to caution you guys and the listeners.
There's a difference between no fear and reckless.
Thank you. That's exactly my point, right? So yeah, we do represent and building code violations. We actually do a lot of receivership work, and that which is so little bit. So we do. I'll finish the answer. Building code violations. We do the demolition. We do stop work orders. We deal with all that. We deal with the city of Chicago. As a matter of fact, rumor has it I've heard that sometimes they call me the Arab in the building court violations cases. Who's your attorney? The Arab. Oh,
little less politically correct than bow tie attorney.
Yes.
Very Chicago.
Very Chicago. Very Chicago. So yeah, I've worked well. There's a lot of great attorneys in the city of Chicago that work for the city. There's some that aren't, but that's like in every situation, right? Yeah. And I think what I've found. So it's a great one. So good instance. Client comes to me and says they've been trying to sell the property forever and they can't clear the building code violations. And the city is screwing them over and they don't like me and they've got something against me and, racial thing. And it became this whole process. And I'm like, okay, well, all that could be true. And what the fuck are you doing? Right? So
yeah, your parapet wall's still falling.
Right. Yes, I get it. Right. The building's falling over, bro. Right. Like I get all that is true. But so in this particular case, it was a masonry issue. And I had to understand what was going on. So I jumped in the building code violations case. And thankfully, I've got good relationships. They respect me enough, and I respect them, that they gave us the time to figure out what's happening, right? They were trying to appoint a receiver. And the receiver, just to give you an idea, is appointed by the court. The city of Chicago asked to have a receiver appointed to fix the problem that the owner would not fix, okay?
Yep.
And I'm not going to...
And there's only like 2 or 3 people the city...
That's
choose
it.
That, yeah, because I've met these guys.
There's a couple guys that they do it. They have these relationships. I'm not going to say how they got them and what they're doing. That's
correct.
A whole other story. However, there's just a few people that do it, right? And they charge a shit ton of money, right? Like if it costs $10,000 to do something, you're going to see a receiver's bill for $30,000 or $40,000, right? And I've got another story on that one, which is crazy as to how I learned about receivership. But in this particular case, I had to go understand from my client, who is their masonry guy? What is the building code violation? What are they trying to do? And I realized that the masonry contractor that was doing the work was getting in fights with the inspector. And so the inspector was like, fuck you, I'm not approving shit. And then the masonry guy wasn't showing up. They were trying to do the work on an easy permit. And by the way, to your listeners, if you take anything from me, right? The moment you ask for an easy permit with the city of Chicago,
It's a bullseye.
they are fucking coming straight to you because they know you're full of shit. They know you're not replacing doors and windows. They know you're doing a gut rehab on an easy permit. So be very cautious as to when you do that easy permit. So he was trying to do all this masonry work, changing all the lentils on an easy permit. And I'm like, okay. So I had to get him an architect, do the plans, get him a new masonry guy, right? Now I'm the attorney, but I'm pulling all this together because I know on the other side that the city is gonna, but then he didn't listen to me. So then he calls me and he's like, yeah, we did everything. Everything is finished. I show up in court and I'm like, yes, judge, everything's okay. Tell the city council, thank you so much. And we've done this, we've done that, we've done this. And she's like, let me read to you the inspector's report. And I'm like, God. I'm like, okay, can I get another 60 days to figure out what's going on? And so again, I was like, listen, if you want this to work, and he's trying to sell the property for a couple $1,000,000, right? So I'm like, just here.
You're going to end up with zero, right? Like
Yeah.
you will lose the property
lose
to
the
the
property.
city of Chicago.
Absolutely.
It's insane.
Right. Because the receiver the receiver's lien is first and foremost above
Everything.
everybody.
Yep.
Except taxes, because the tax lawyers are all the politicians, right? But over everybody. So they'll wipe out the bank, right? So I'm trying to prevent the receiver from getting appointed. And finally, I had to go in and really take over as almost like as a GC, right? And I have clients who are GCs, and we brought their licenses in. So we kind of orchestrated the whole thing to pull it out. What the guy failed to tell me what was happening was he stopped paying his mortgage 6 months earlier. And the reason he didn't tell me was because the prior attorney that he had was so gun shy that every time something came up, he wanted to quit. And so he didn't want to tell me that he was in the situation. So when we got to closing and he sold, he didn't get as much money as he thought he would get. And I'm like, bro, had you told me 6 months ago that this was the case, I would have slow rolled the building violations case and slammed it right up the lender's nose. And I would have been like, hey, look, you're going to get a receiver. They're going to take the property. And I would have short sailed that bitch and probably got my client an extra $200,000-$300,000, right? All because he was just scared. So attorneys are gun shy. There are attorneys who are afraid of their own shadows. And then there are attorneys like me who don't give a fuck, right? Picking an attorney is so critical. And this drives me insane. I'll get calls from potential clients and they'll be like, how much do you charge for a closing? And I'm like, $650. They're like, oh, well, the guy down the street's charging $500.
Meanwhile, there's like $1 million transaction where everything can go wrong.
Are you fucking kidding me? I'm like, you're about to spend $700,000 cash to buy a house.
Like the title wire fee is like $75. It's like chain of command $25.
I'm like, all right, this is probably the biggest transaction you've ever done in your life, and you're worried about an extra $100. Come on. Usually with those clients, I'm like, thank you very much.
It's probably not a good fit.
By the way, I said $650. It's really $850 now. So, but yes.
Yeah, you've self-selected to the higher premium.
Absolutely. Yes, there is. It's called the headache fee.
Yeah.
Yes, it's actually on our price list. Headache fee.
So, what's next? You've done a lot. You've switched careers. You're killing it as attorney. What, like, next 5 years? Give us what you got going on.
Well, that's a great question. So, we are putting a huge push on our business. From the real estate side, I really want to double our revenue. I got a big push. And
real quick, for our listeners out there, cover all Chicagoland.
Oh yeah, we cover all Chicagoland. So we do all the collar counties. We do Chicago, Cook County, all the collar counties.
And RTLO, tenant stuff.
I don't do landlord tenant stuff, but I can help you with the leases and the contracts and everything else to make sure you're compliant. But I don't do evictions. It's very specific.
Niche.
And very niche. But we do building code violations. I do foreclosure defense, and we do real estate transactions, which includes the short sales, loan mods, and stuff, and deeds in lieu. But our big push is to really drive our revenue. We're really turning to our referral partners to help us. We've done a great service for you. We'd love to serve more people and help more people. So we're looking at growing and building that. And as I said, I'm doing my master's in social work, right? And it's like, how the fuck do you go from lawyer
Yeah, what
to social
triggered that?
work?
Where?
You know, I'm going through a rough divorce, right? And I've got a GAL, and just hearing the horror stories from all of my friends who went through divorce, and they had these guardian ad litems who are attorneys, maybe fine, well-established, high character, good attorneys. They're not therapists. And so they get involved with these kids, and they think they know what's best. And as you know, most attorneys are very humble, right?
I was hoping you were going to smirk after you said that.
I totally. I mean, the biggest fucking arrogant guy here is right here at the table, right? But yeah, so that arrogance really flows through. And so they're making decisions for kids, and they don't understand the impacts of those decisions.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm not a family law guy, and I don't do family law. But I figured that if I could go and become a social worker with a focus on child welfare, that opens up the door to potentially being a guardian ad litem in the future as another extension of the practice area. And you're like, well, how can you do both? So running a law practice is a business, right? And most attorneys, they do their closings, they're doing everything, they're even doing their own billing, right? It's just, they're not running a business. They have a job,
Yes.
right? And so one of the things that I've built in my career is companies, right? And built businesses. And what we've done is we've spent a tremendous amount of money in technology and a tremendous amount of money in my people and my staff and training. So that way I can run a business that operates almost independently, right? So the fact that I'm sitting here for 3 hours today, right? And business is still happening, closings are still taking place, right? That says a lot in terms of how I've built my team. And that gives me the flexibility to go in and expand. So next 5 years, I think if the political climate continues in the chaos, right, the ups and downs and the uncertainty, because that's going to create more issues. So we have people, everything's more expensive. Gas is more expensive. Eggs are more expensive. Tomatoes are more expensive. Like food is just fucking more expensive. People aren't making more money, right? Then, especially in Cook County, our fucking taxes got jacked,
Yep.
right? So now people are like, oh, I can't afford my mortgage. No, you can't afford your taxes, right? So now your tax bill's up an extra $3,000, $4,000 a year. And tariffs are going to make everything more expensive. So now all of this is putting pressure on the middle class, and it's putting pressure on people who can't afford, right, at the bottom rungs. So I think we're going to see a lot more foreclosures. I think we're going to see a lot more distressed assets. The problem also on the other side of that, which is why we haven't seen that yet, is because there's no inventory,
Yeah.
right? So the shortage of inventory has propped up the real estate market, which is good, but I don't know how long that's going to last. So next 5 years, doing more deals, more crazier deals, fun deals. Yeah.
Think about what he just said. In 07, 08, you had so much inventory because they were literally in the Chicago market building tens of thousands of homes at
Yes.
any given moment for a decade.
Correct.
And all those people that lived in Schaumburg, Westmont, Downers, they might go build something new in that town, or the people who can afford there, they'd move to these, Kendall County and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And buy that and left all this other housing stock, this infill housing stock. So I never really thought about it that way, of the situation we're in right now and why it's different around the housing stock.
Yeah.
That's
Because
very-
we stopped building in 08.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, fuck that, we ain't building on spec.
Yeah.
So you have no more spec builders. Like, if you remember, there used to be these huge developments.
I moved into one of them.
Yeah.
1,300 homes.
Right.
Like, now they build 130 at a time
That's
for the
it.
most part.
Very slow because the lenders don't want to lend against it.
Short of Crown Development, they're like the only developer out there that
Yeah.
does large scale stuff. Everyone else is doing these small 130 unit
Right.
projects.
But the tipping point isn't residential. The dangerous one right now is really on the office space, commercial space. Like, you're seeing these big, huge buildings downtown that at one time were worth 40 to 50 to $100 million are now selling for 10, 15.
But how does that work with, there's just a lot of capital out there and to recapitalize some of those? You're seeing some of that stuff happen just in my network of like these towers. They're just getting recapitalized, or they're kind of getting sold off like quietly or traded. Like,
Or
there's
giving
just
it back
so
to
much
the bank.
capital. There's just a lot of capital out there right now, which there wasn't back then either. So how do you see that play into it?
I think, it's interesting. You have a flush of cash. You have no inventory, right? But then you have serious distress on the office market. and no one wants to get into the office market because it's so distressed. So really, the only ones you're going to get into those are going to be long-term players, right? The ones that don't need to make big hits, they're willing to make 8%, 9% on their money for the next 30 years, right? I don't know how that's going to play out. I will say, when I'm looking at it, is if you've got a tremendous number of commercial foreclosures, right? People are like, well, that's commercial, not residential. It's the same fucking bank.
It comes out. Of the
Yeah,
same
it's
pot.
still.
It's the same fucking bank, right? So it's going to put strain and pressure somewhere. The interesting thing is I'm seeing zero money down loans. So people are buying properties. You can buy property now with no money down with a 600 credit score, right? Sound familiar? Right? So it'll be interesting. The next few years are going to be interesting. I think for me, if you have cash, right, now is the time to hold it because something's going to change, right? Or if you're going to use your cash, use other people's money. Use the banks. Get a lender. Fuck it, 12%. Who gives a shit? Hoard your cash. That's my opinion. Because if you've got cash, when there's blood in the streets, that's when it's time to buy.
Yep. All right, it's good stuff. Ready to wrap?
Ready to wrap?
So
What's your competitive advantage? How have you been able to do this while others wish they could?
I think the fact that we do things that no one else will do. The fact that we can do things that other people can't do or don't know how to do. And we're aggressive, but at the same time, we have velvet gloves.
Yep. All right, you work with a lot of investors. What is the one piece of advice you would tell someone that is yet to buy their first property here in the Chicagoland area?
Oh, of course, hire me as your lawyer. I would say the work your numbers. Work your numbers, and whatever numbers you think you worked out, it's going to be different when you're done.
Yep.
Without question.
God doesn't care about your spreadsheet.
No, your spreadsheet is bullshit. Your spreadsheet is bullshit, and it's really important. Who your team is and who you're working with is going to be critical, and expect to lose money on your first deal.
Love it.
What do you do for fun?
Oh, I don't think I can talk about it here in public.
The X rating? Is
The
that
X.
what we're going
That
back
was
to?
the X one. That's what I do. See, when the pot never comes off.
Everything else.
Jokes.
Right. Yes. Yes. I love hanging out with friends. I really do. I tried pickleball for a while. It was fun. Yeah, I love hanging out with friends and a very small core, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just people you ride or die, right?
All right, so give us either a good book, podcast, or self-development activity you'd recommend to our listeners.
Ooh, I got a few of those. So
Bring it.
book. So for all your men out there and all you women, this book, I'm not getting any money off of this. No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Like, that was an eye-opening game changer for me as a man, and realizing how I really screwed up my marriage, right? And how I just was showing up in the world. And women, if you want to understand men over the last 30 years or 40 years, read No More Mr. Nice Guy. Game changer. And then I'm actually reading a book now, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Well, that one's good. Isn't that like an Australian guy? I did the audiobook, and he's got some accent.
It's
a good one.
fantastic. It's fantastic. So yeah, those I would recommend those two books.
Awesome.
All right. Besides yourself, name another valuable resource to Chicago real estate investors.
Besides myself, another valuable resource to Chicago real estate investors. A lender. You need a really good lender.
I'll drop a name.
Drop a name. So I would say Tammy Lester and Rico. The two of them are fantastic. I know she's going to hate me right now because I can't remember her, what do you call it? But I'll be sure to get you her information so you can drop it in the podcast.
Okay.
Actually, I can probably find her number if you want to go that route.
I will put it in the show notes.
We'll put it in the
Got
show
it.
notes.
All right. Yes. So Tammy Lester, she's a fantastic lender. I think that's really critical to transaction because as a great lender, when shit goes sideways, you want a lender who can actually massage your numbers to make
Make
work
it
the right
happen.
way. Yep.
All right, Faisal, thank you so much. You provide a ton of value to our listeners. How can they learn more about you? Is there any way they can provide value to you?
Yes, absolutely. You can reach out to me at 312-775-0980. That's a direct line. You can actually even text that number and introduce yourselves to us. You can find us at foreclosuredefenselawoffice.com or evhaas.com. And you can look me up on Facebook as the Bowtie Attorney.
Awesome. All right, so we have our Chicago Fact before we wrap here. Mark, who are we playing for? Who's sponsoring?
All right. Today's sponsor is Pavlic Architecture. So Samuel is sponsoring this. If you need an architect, make sure you check them out. But we're playing for Kitty Dawkins, who bought a shirt on the Straight Up Chicago merch store. So Kitty, if one of us gets this question right, you get a $50 gift card brought to you by Pavlic Architecture. I can never say his name.
Pavlicek.
Pavlic, thank you. Sorry, Samuel.
All right. We've done a few Elgin questions. I know he went to high school in Elgin when we're doing our research here. We haven't talked about the Grand Victoria, the Riverboat Casino, though. So your questions are, I'm going to give you 4 statements. 3 of these are true. 1 is false. Which one is the false statement about the Grand Victoria in Elgin? It is the 5th most popular tourist attraction in Illinois. It first opened its doors in 1994. It employs roughly 1,500 people. It is nearly 1 square mile in area.
I would say square mile, 1 square mile in area. It's not that.
I would say the 5th most popular.
You guys got it. It's a square mile one.
Yeah, that just seems that's a lot of. You remember when that first opened? Like,
Yes.
the law was like it had to pull
It
away.
had to be on the river.
Yeah, you had to go.
Pull about like once a day. You had to
Yeah.
pull out and come back in.
So yeah,
That's right. Yeah. it's pretty
What's crazy is I was doing the research on this, like how much money goes to it goes to Elgin, then it goes to like King County, then it goes to the state, and they all jockey for different percentages, like almost on an annual basis. Like
Yeah,
the behind the scenes of.
Well Child Center. So we jockey for their to do like the match on Giving Day and Giving Tuesday
Really?
and all that stuff. So yeah, they're the big. They give a lot of money back to the community as well there. So whether they're forced to or they want to, they do it. So
All right, it's very good. We got a winner.
all right. So Kitty, you get a $50 gift card brought to you by.
Pavlicek Architecture.
All right. Hand off there. Sorry. All right. I know this episode had value, so take a moment and share this video or iTunes link with a friend, a client, or an enemy as a way to bridge your differences. So check us out. Thank you. And listeners, we'll see you on Thursday.